Welcome to the show Gold Squadron Gays. It's the podcast where two Star Wars loving gays talk about and review their favorite Star Wars content while also being gay as hell. I'm your host, Bradley Brower.
I'm your other host, Charles Rogers, and I'm fucking tired.
I'm pretty sure you've started about 6 or 7 episodes of that.
I'm gonna fucking keep doing it, Bradley.
In our history of
conventions
the whole library.
Are hard. Conventions are really hard, man.
I feel like you've done that like a million times. I really, actually, if I had a way to supercut it and I actually genuinely wanted to do that, I would. And I'd be like, now, roll the clip of him saying this a million times.
I would love to hear like a 3-hour supercut of my coming into the show. Because I'm the one that has to do it. Bradley pre-recorded his bit. I'm the one that actually has to take us into the show.
Imagine if we did live every time.
God, no.
It would be.
Couldn't.
I mean, I could probably do it. It's just, it would sound different every single time because I'd be like, I'd give different inflections and just random. Like, because sometimes I just do it. Like, I'm just like, welcome to the show. Like, I'll mumble it or I'll just like go through it. But sometimes I'll just do it normal. Like, but it's just weird.
Sometimes he tries to get me to corpse.
Right.
Occasionally it has worked.
I haven't done that in a while.
You have not, and I'm expecting it to come up. Like,
you know what?
Eventually.
Maybe on our next batch of episodes that are about a certain topic, it might cause me to. And you never know.
It's going to slap me in the face, rather like that random Temptation Island joke in the middle of a limbo.
Oh, was there?
Did I not tell you this?
You
or did I?
me,
Was I
kind
waiting?
of.
I think I texted you and told you they make a Temptation Island joke.
Interesting.
So for context, if you are not subscribed to our Patreon at patreon.com/goldsquadrongays, where we post both uncut versions of the episodes and our extended discussions pre-meeting, I recently watched all of the TV show Elite, which I thought in its first 3 seasons was one of the best shows I've ever seen, and by season 7 and 8 was one of the worst. And this is not the same creative team, it is the same studio. Produced a new show called Olimpo. I am watching through that because I have a fascination for terrible media. The show is not good, but I am committed to watching the whole thing. There was randomly a Temptation Island joke in one of the episodes. Bradley has worked on Temptation Island in the past, which is why I don't get into my opinion of Temptation Island very much on this show.
I see why
in the extended cuts.
It's confirmed that like since 2020 they've done 8 seasons of La Isla de las Tentaciones. So it's Temptation Island,
go.
Spain.
There we go. Yes.
So there
I
you
don't
go.
know why Temptation Island is as popular as it is. There might be something in the other seasons that I'm missing out on.
Have you not seen the clip from this one?
I have not seen any clips from.
There is literally a very famous clip. This is before I even worked on the show, of the guy.
Is this the guy jumping the fence? Because I have seen that one.
Yeah, he like rips off his shirt, he like jumps the fence, and then he's like running to the beach, like calling out the girl's name. It's so fucking funny. Anyway, we can't talk about that forever because
we cannot talk about that
that's
forever. We have to talk about what we're here to talk about, even though we're recording this super late at night because we're just trying to get it in the can before Bradley gets on a plane.
Right.
And I'm slowly losing my mind as we are at time of recording 5 weeks away from Legacy Expo. And I'm slightly losing. But let's take a break so I can talk about Star Wars.
Let's do that. And of course, we have to talk about one of arguably the best Star Wars that has graced our presence. We're going to just talk about Andor, the series as a whole, as we have now finished the show, and the show has come to an actual end this time. So normally in our kind of post-mortem recap episodes, we just do the season as a whole. But because this is a series finale, this is like the last of this show, kind of like what we just did with our Bad Batch recently. We'll just kind of talk about the show as a whole. Just some of the things that we liked, we disliked, some of the things we want to see moving forward with the characters, if possibly there is a moving forward with some of the characters, and just general opinions and things like that, just to kind of vent and enjoy what we like, talk about what we liked about the season, really.
This show needed like one more season.
I know. Okay.
That's my overarching point.
I know. It's really sad how I get it. I mean, the show is good, and I understand it did come to a natural end, and they wanted to kind of be done because I think Tony Gilroy said in an interview or something that like he wanted to do 5 seasons, but like he couldn't because it would
Originally,
take too long.
well, so the way that it worked was that during the big like streaming push of 2020, 2021, and that disastrous press conference that they did, they had basically like were starting to set up because they wanted Andor to kind of be their Game of Thrones. So they were expecting it to get like 5 seasons. They were expecting streaming to be this huge deal. And so they got their first season, they made their first season. It was very expensive.
Right.
And there have been a couple of interesting statements. Some of them I find a little contradictory as to what actually happened. Tony Gilroy and Diego Luna have both brought up that one, it takes like 2 to 3 years to make one of these seasons. And Tony Gilroy doesn't want to do this for 10 years. He doesn't want the crew having to do this for 10 years. Diego Luna is also not getting any younger, still hot, but definitely moving more and more away from where he was when he filmed Rogue One.
Right.
And they've also said that Tony Gilroy has said in an interview that he was told like by the Disney executives that like, oh, streaming is dead. Like,
Mm.
which it definitely from their actions generally, they've dialed back a lot of the licensed and like a lot of the sort of IP streaming shows. Still doing some of them, they're still doing Percy Jackson, but Percy Jackson's the big draw to Disney Plus at this point. But he also kind of I don't know if he outright said it or he more sort of implied that Kathleen Kennedy basically swooped in and got them a second season of it. That she had basically was the one who championed it. And so it very much the second season you can kind of definitely see as we talked about in our coverage repeatedly. I feel like every fucking episode we talked about this that you can see the bones of what this show would have been and they just had to kind of go through their outline and punch it up for the second season, which I am glad we've got the complete story. But one of the really sort of dark clouds that are hanging over my enjoyment of the show is it's very hard to watch the second season and not think about what would have been if they'd gotten their 5 season run.
Yeah, my only compromise to the 5 season is three. Like I would have like I think I would have filmed them back to back, the 2 seasons, and I would have just knocked it out. Like given him however many he needed to tell the full story in those 2 seasons. Because I just feel like this truncated season two, it just there's so much to tell. There's so much more story to tell that we just didn't see. And I feel like I hate being the what if guy because it's just like, well, what if they did this? What if they did that? And it's we can love to theorize and say stuff, but it's like until it's pen to paper and it's put in the can, it's really it never happened. And I hate that because the show has a lot more potential, even though it's good. It is a good show, and there's definitely parts of it that are better than other stuff, but I just think that it suffers the most from missed opportunity and potential. I think other shows like Mandalorian and things like that, they only suffer because like it's just too small. Like I think Andor is like really understands what it is. Mandalorian kind of is evolving into something else, which I think is good for Mandalorian. I think it started off as one thing and then it's kind of evolving into this.
It's in this weird transitionary
Yeah,
state where they very clearly have a direction they are moving with it. There are some hiccups to get there,
right.
I think. And like something that I was noticing too as we were going through Andor is that it's really a shame to think about like the fact that the show was clearly planned to have more. There were more setups that weren't followed up on. There were things that were clearly truncated, and it's difficult to separate what we have on the screen from what would have been. And it is difficult to take that show on its own merits. When we talk about media analysis and media criticism, we talk about needing to take the art as it comes and learning how to have those conversations while also having conversations about context and having conversations about the broader franchise. But I was thinking the other day about how sort of our Ahsoka coverage and how that was different than Andor, to where I felt like, I didn't really like Ahsoka the first time I watched it. I thought it was kind of dumb and didn't really enjoy it the first time I watched it. But I went into our analysis with an open mind, and I was really trying to look for like what was Dave Filoni trying to do with the show that I didn't really get. And through that, I gained much more of an enjoyment of the show when I was going through and trying to pick that apart. Andor, I feel like I've had the opposite effect to where when I've been watching the show, I'm like, hell yeah, this is incredible. And then I try to do a deep analysis of the show. And I keep getting hung up on like, this feels missing. This feels missing. This is not going to be followed up on. It feels missing. And it's a difficult conversation to have because the material we have is so good, so rich, so well written. And it just feels like we needed more. And it's difficult to divorce it from the feeling of needing more.
Yeah, I think also the problem with Andor is that you're watching Andor and going, wow, this is such a good drama. This is such a good show. You're not necessarily going, wow, this is so much fun. Like, I'm not having like a fun time. I'm having like
Speak
a,
for your fucking self. I was having a great time with the second season. First
well,
season's depressing as hell.
you're also very,
I'm
you
very
know,
strange.
yeah,
To be clear, I'm very weird when it comes to my preferences on what I find fun to
right.
consume in media. See many of our previous extended bits where I will openly talk about how I like watch bad movies and watch like read terrible books, and people get on my case about why are you doing this, but also like the types of things I enjoy watching are things like Conclave.
Right. You're very into like I would argue this is a political thriller and it would be
You
like
don't even
that's
have to argue it. It's straight up a political thriller. That's
right.
what it is.
So th some people, like yourself, find that very entertaining or find that enjoyable and, having fun. I think I don't want to generalize people in general, but I think some fans are
You.
more of the entertainment value aspect of it. I think they would like that's why they would like Mandalorian better or even honestly Kenobi better. Stuff like that where it's like I think Mandalorian's more like genuinely fun. Like that's like no, we're just having fun. There's random aliens. There's just silly, like a little silly puppet doing silly things. You know what I mean? That's what Mandalorian is, and that's the fun side of Star Wars. Andor is the very serious, like, oh, this is fashion, the rise of fascism put into like fantasy space. Like it's
Well, and it's
amazing.
also more blatant in
Yeah,
Andor because it's a show for adults, and so
right,
it's putting these themes of fascism and resistance and rebellion into a context that adults can understand because adults are more able to, theoretically, adults are more able to tackle those things with a sense of nuance. No, I
some,
live on the fucking internet, and I can
right,
tell you that these people do not know how to do any sort of media literacy or analysis whatsoever. But in theory, adults should be able to do that. Resistance is covering many of those same themes. Rebels is covering many of those same themes. Like a lot of this stuff is dealing with those same things, but it's dealing with it in different ways.
right,
And I think when Star Wars is sort of at its best, when it's at its healthiest as a franchise is when it feels comfortable exploring different genres and exploring different stories and media types while also keeping the feeling very Star Wars. And what the feeling very Star Wars being is very, very nebulous. There's some people who's like, it's got to have lightsabers and blasters and spaceships and all that. But then you can make an argument there are some very successful Star Wars stories that have absolutely none of those things. And so one of my thoughts looking at Andor is I said, I think on a previous episode, I think I said it on the mic, where I said Andor is one of the best TV shows that I've ever seen, but I don't know if I'd call it some of the best Star Wars I'd ever seen. It is certainly Star Wars and deserves its place there. But just looking at the broad, what the genre could be, I keep returning to Death Troopers. And we did a whole episode on Death Troopers. Bradley knows what Death Troopers is, but if you're just tuning into our Andor coverage, Death Troopers was a 2000 and I believe 8 horror novel that was published under the Legends continuity. And it was a zombie story. It was a story about a zombie outbreak on a Star Destroyer and a prison barge. It's a really fucking good book. And it feels in a lot of ways like a Star Wars adventure, but it's a very weird read because you don't think of some of the things in this book as being Star Wars themes necessarily.
right,
And I feel like Andor falls into that same category a little bit. It's not what I think of when I think of Star Wars, but it's doing something new and interesting with the genre. I will also say I recently rewatched A New Hope, and A New Hope is very political. The later two original trilogy movies move away from that before very much returning to being politically driven movies. But not to talk for too long, but I also think there's a difference between something being a show about politics versus a story that has politics in it that's a different type of story. Because I do think that the prequels are very, very much about politics, but they're action adventure stories. And they're telling it through that lens, as opposed to Andor, which is telling a straight up political drama.
Right. And I think
That
also,
was a lot of different ideas that I just went from one to the
yeah,
other.
no, you did,
And
but
I'm
you
very
naturally
sorry to
progressed because it
Bradley.
actually goes into my point of I think that Andor just happened to come out, not to be too political, but happened to come out during a time that politics is very diverse right now. It's a very hot topic right now. And it has been divisive in the past, but I don't think it's been this divisive.
We've had periods. It has depended. Whew, this is a thing that I cannot get into a long and
Right.
complicated
I
because
don't
I
want to go
have
too
many
crazy.
thoughts
Yeah.
on this. We exited a period in 2016 where politics for people on more of the left-leaning side of the spectrum, people didn't really have to engage. If you're a young person, you're more left-leaning, you didn't really have to engage with it for a period between 2008 and 2016. And then 2016 happened, and ever since then, it's been much more at the forefront. I think of a lot of young people's minds, like people in Bradley and I's generation and younger, in a way that it had not been for us prior to that point, because a lot of us were kids or teenagers during the Iraq War. And so we were watching the prequels and going, this is fun with lightsabers. And it's not until you're an adult that you watch it and you realize, oh, there's a lot going on here. But Bradley's right. I think that politics are so much on the forefront now because of the, current administration and everything along with that. But it's also very interesting because Tony Gilroy's talked about how the show is not meant to be a direct allegory. We laugh at, for example, Dedra Miro discovering the Death Star because it got forwarded from an email chain, right, coming out weeks after Signalgate, where if you are somehow unaware, a reporter for I think the Atlantic was added to a secret signal chat with the Secretary of Defense and some other high-ranking government officials. It was a whole thing. But he's talked about how he's more drawn from history, and the thing is,
Right.
history repeats. So he's drawing from the ineptitude of fascist bureaucracy in the past. It just happens to be something that has reflected our modern day
Right. I do find
in a
that
way that seems
fascinating.
to hit.
Yeah.
Because
It's
he's
just lucky that that happened, but yeah.
Yeah, lucky for the show because that definitely raised a lot of eyebrows. But that's what I think makes stories like this timeless too, is if you can really dig into the history and look at what are the instead of saying I'm going to make a direct analysis to a thing that's happening right now, what are the historical patterns that we are currently living in and how can we draw from previous instances of those historical patterns to make something that will be both applicable to the present day but also something that is applicable to periods of history.
I want to do one little mini section because I feel like this is important to the show
Mini
and
section in quotation marks.
how good it is. I want to give a shout out to what I think is the best part of the show, which is the women actors of the show. I think all the women on this show, arguably, are the best part of the show. I think
They
I
are
know
absolutely nailing it. And
I yeah,
I love that this show had so many roles for women.
four women,
I
right?
wish there had been some women in the writers' room, but
That's the
I
only
do
thing,
love
yeah.
that there was a lot of really good powerhouse performances for women in this show, which is awesome. And Star Wars has gotten a lot better about that
Right.
after having one woman of note in the original trilogy and one woman of note in the prequel trilogy. And then Rey is the protagonist of
Of
the
the third
sequel
one, right?
trilogy,
Yeah.
and Leia is also a pretty major character in it. But then, yeah, with shows like Ahsoka and Andor, it's been awesome. And yeah, Genevieve O'Reilly, Adria Arjona, Elizabeth Delau, fucking incredible actresses, really showing up for this, and I love that they gave them a lot to do.
it's funny because like I think we were joking, the show is called Andor, but it's not about Andor.
No, Andor's a guy in it. Also, Denise Go.
Denise Go, yeah.
I cannot overlook Denise Go. Yeah, it's interesting because the show being called Andor and Andor himself, I see what they were going for now,
Hmm.
where he was gonna get more prominence. He gets much more prominence in the back two arcs. And really he does a lot of character development in that third arc.
Yeah, and it's so funny because he's actually the only part of the show that I'm like, I don't need to know more about this character. Like, I feel like all the other characters, you genuinely are like, I guess this leads into my next bit of where do we want to see some of these characters show up again. I think that he's the only character in the show where, because we know what happens to him because of Rogue One, we don't actually care that much like about his character throughout the show as much as some of the other newer characters because we genuinely have mystique about them. We're like, oh, I wonder what Luthen's going to end up doing by the end of this show. I don't know. Like what is, Dedra, where is she going to end up by the end? Like we don't actually know the answers to these questions and obviously until the finale, but I feel like those are the characters we want to know more about. Like I want to know more about Clea. I want to know more about Dedra. I want to know more about Vel. Like where are they going with these characters?
Yeah, I definitely want to see like where some of these characters are going after the fact, just because some of them were set up so interestingly and then they never really had time to like fully realize their character development and their character potential. Did you see I sent you a TikTok of Tony Gilroy talking about what he speculates Dedra Mira's fate to be?
Oh no, I don't remember that one.
Let's just say she does not survive Narkina 5 or Narkina whatever prison she's in.
Narkina 17.
He
Yeah.
doesn't think that she survived. I would love to see her survive and play a sort of Usain Isard that's a Legends character role in the like resurrected empire. But I would love to see what happens to some of these characters, but on the other hand, like some of them are almost I kind of don't want to.
Right, because you like just the way it ended. You're like, okay.
I liked Clea's ending
Hmm.
enough that I really kind of don't want to see her again. I think
Yeah.
her character resolved by the end of the show, and I just like would like to imagine she's off somewhere retired. I could not see her like leaving the fight behind,
Right.
but I would like to imagine she's off somewhere retired.
I mean, yeah, I think post OG trilogy, yeah, that would be true. I think so. I have this weird idea for like, I don't know if it's a TV show or a comic series or a movie series or whatever, but I have this idea of doing the original trilogy timeline, but like from a certain point of view, where you take all these other characters who are doing stuff during the plot of these movies.
Bradley, that's the Fakpov books.
What's
You're
Fakpov?
describing the Fakpov books, the from a certain point of view books.
No, those I know that. I'm saying turn that into a visual element.
Oh, okay. You want to have like a Fakpov anthology.
Yeah, I think an anthology show that would take
Okay.
place in
For a
between the
minute, I
original
thought you'd
trilogies.
forgotten about the Fakpov
No,
books,
I
and I
know
was
they
going to have to
exist.
gently explain to you on camera that this idea
No, no, no,
actually
no, no, no,
exists.
no. I know the idea exists. I'm saying I think the
I'm
current
trying
move
to
right
get
now.
them. I'm trying to get them to let me write
Yeah,
some of them for the future.
there you go.
I think they should let us co-write the prequel trilogy era.
Yeah.
That
But
would be very, very funny.
I think from a certain point of view, anthology series would actually be really interesting because then you could take some of these characters who may not have like potential for like, yeah, are we going to see a show called Clea? No, that's never going to happen. However, an episode or two about what she's doing during Empire Strikes Back or what she's doing during Return of the Jedi, I would definitely like to watch that or see what she's up to, or maybe Vel is doing something in between those movies that's very important. You know what I mean? Like I want
Tales
to
of the
know.
Rebellion.
I think it could be interesting. And also because we only know, I mean, I'm sure there's little mini things that we've, heard stories of, but we basically only know our OG trio and what they did to help the rebellion. I have to believe because of this Andor show that there is a whole other thing that we're not seeing going on behind the scenes during the first three movies that is actually helping and making things happen. And like, I mean, by the time of Empire, Leia is full on, the general at that point anyway, even though she might not have the title of general, but she's
For
basically
some
doing,
reason, they've
yeah,
decided not to give her the title of general,
she's still
even
princess,
though
but whatever. Like, yeah.
I was reading a short comic from an anthology called Visionaries, which was actually really cool. It was an anthology that was written and illustrated by concept artists on Revenge of the Sith.
Okay.
And there is a short story or a short comic in there where it's about Mon Mothma's son who dies during the Battle of Hoth. And I was reading this, and it ends with like her getting a recorded message from him, and they name drop Lita in this anthology. So Lita existed.
So
Like
she had
I
two
knew
kids?
Mon Mothma had a daughter in Legends, but I didn't know she had been named Lita in Legends.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's like it says like, give my love to Dad and Lita. And I'm like, wait, so first of all, in the Legends continuity, Mon Mothma's still talking to her husband and daughter. But also, two, Lita is from that, and then we never see her again. And so I'm like, in canon, you now have this opportunity that you've brought these two characters into canon. Do something with them after the fact in the New Republic era, or even like more in the Empire era.
Yeah, I think you could honestly, there's a lot of stuff. I think the problem is what they need to start doing now, instead of trying to kind of like Frankenstein all this stuff together and, be like, oh, we're the marvelization of, all the shows and things. And like, as much as I love the fact that Ahsoka is technically a spin-off of Mandalorian and, it's all, I mean, it's still a brainchild of, Dave Filoni. So it's all going to be his thing anyway. But I
It's
think
this
they need to
tiny
start.
little corner of the universe.
Right. It's his little mini section. I think,
Even though he oversees all of it.
right. And now he's actually technically created a second galaxy. So now he can just fuck off to that galaxy if he really wanted to and have stories there. But I think what they need to start doing is they need to just straight up start adapting books and just having both. Because I think that they're just kind of, I think they just don't have a lot of vision sometimes with all this stuff, or they have too much vision. And I think what is nice about adapting novels in other series is that there's a little bit more of a roadmap for you there. You don't have to do all the work because the author already kind of did most of the work for you. I think that would help, and then you could just get in directors and things to kind of make more of a visual vision to it. Like kind of like what you said with like your Death Troopers book. I think would that not just make a good standalone movie?
So I see where you're coming from. I don't know if I trust Star Wars fans with adaptations of like pre-existing canon stories yet. I don't know if we're mature enough to handle that just because like that kind of happened with the Ahsoka block of Tales of the Jedi, and I really did not care for the adaptation, quote unquote adaptation, which it really wasn't. It was Dave Filoni working off the same outline as E.K. Johnson when she wrote the book. But even that caused enough of a stir that I don't know if we're ready for that as a fandom yet. I also think too that there's certain properties that it would work really well for. And then there's certain properties that I'm kind of like, I don't know how you would do this. Like, I
I
don't
mean,
know.
yeah,
I would love to visually see some of the High Republic stories on the screen.
right.
And like Mark Thompson's narrated audiobooks are some of the most incredible audiobook narration I've ever heard in my entire life. The man is a master. I also met him 2 weekends ago. He is a wonderful human being. But looking at the broad arc of the publishing initiative, there are certain things that I'm like, this really kind of only works in publishing, or like Inquisitor Rise of the Red Blade, for example, too, I think would be really hard to adapt just because there's so much internal monologue that his cat does. And
Right.
like so much of it is her thought. So I don't know. It's an interesting thought, but
I think it's
I
case by
also
case basis.
I
Like
also know that
you
too
know,
that they've slowed down, which I think is the correct move. I said at the top of the episode that I, was disappointed Andor had to do a lot of cutting and hack its second season down to the bone. But on the flip side of things, they announced too many fucking shows. That
yeah.
press conference was a terrible idea. And
Yep.
I know that Bob Chapek forced it out the door, and they were greenlighting everything left and right, and half of those shows haven't even ever materialized. Where is a Droid Story?
A
Where is
droid
it?
story, a thing that never
Uh,
was. I don't even think there was
Never.
concept. I honestly,
Uh,
I genuinely think they just made up a name and they were just like, that's a thing that's gonna
they were
happen
just
at some
we
point.
got a blank space on the presentation. We're gonna
Yep.
add that in. But I think that it was a terrible idea. I think the shows we've gotten out of it have generally been pretty good. Some of them I've not liked, but I'm a human being with subjective opinions. But I do think them slowing down and really being able to put a lot of time and effort into what they are putting out bodes well long term for the franchise. In a way that pumping one thing out after the other really is not was not something. It was overwhelming. It was overwhelming, and it was starting to bleed together, and some of the shows were starting to run out of steam towards the end there. Looking at you, The Mandalorian season 3.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I think, again, that's why this Mandalorian Grogu movie I think is going to be so successful because I think you have essentially played out the serialization of it. Like, I think now the Mandalorian has evolved past that because I think it works better as a major motion picture of like, here, let's do set pieces and like really great, like cool, battles and things with him. And I think it works, especially since Pedro Pascal is becoming this kind of too famous for the role kind of thing now. He's a little too well known at this point. It kind of worked before because he wasn't as prolific as he is. And
Now, he was mostly, when he was cast as the Mandalorian, he was mostly just known for being Oberyn Martell in Game of Thrones.
right, and
Like,
I
that
think
was the thing everyone knew him for.
that was a good draw for him. I think now he's too well known because he's been overly cast, I
He's
think now.
Mr. Fantastic. He's Joel in The Last of Us. He's the voice of the Mandalorian.
Yeah, he's starting to kind
He's,
of pop off, as they say, which is not bad for him. Like, great, collect your checks, like,
well,
do whatever you want to do. But
mild spoilers for The Last of Us season 2, but we'll see how much he appears in future seasons of The Last of Us.
oh well. I mean, I can't get into that problem, but I think
I
what's
I badly do not want to spoil the context of what I just said. But The Last of Us season 2, that'll have to maybe be a topic for an extended bit for the Patreon
yeah,
extended bit because I have a lot of opinions about whether or not I thought The Last of Us season 2 lived up to the first season, and we don't need to be getting into that. But yeah, I also think that like them returning into theaters sort of with this transitionary movie, this is kind of turned into a Mando and Grogu discussion now. But them returning in with this movie, they're going to give us a drought of a whole year where basically nothing except Visions is going to come out. We're not going to see Maul until after the movie. So they're giving us this drought. They're giving us a chance to breathe, and they're going to come in with a bang. They're going to do a movie every 2 years, which we'll see how that works out. I wish they wouldn't announce these movies prior to them going into production, but we
yeah.
got casting news for Starfighter today. So Starfighter does seem like it's happening.
Okay, that's good.
Uh,
Going back, well, we should go back a little bit to Andor for a second. Now that Andor the series is done and Rogue One happened, it was its own thing. I guess what is and in the theme of I'm going to use this Redditor's example as like an idea for what we want to kind of see the next evolution of Andor being. So if Rogue One was the first kind of story, Andor is the second story. What would be like the next thing that relates to these characters and or situations? This person on Reddit, Stannis the Manus 93 said, "I want the book of Uncle Harlow."
Jesus Christ. Genuine answer to the question.
Yeah, yeah, give me a real answer. Not the book of Uncle Harlow because as funny as that would be, I would actually genuinely love to see a quote unquote like I guess maybe like a mobster kind of Star Wars story would be
You know that
interesting, but
weirdly okay, so I'm gonna take two disparate ideas. You know that weirdly good episode of The Mandalorian season 3 where it very suddenly jumps in writing quality for most of the episode
mhm,
because it's not about the Mandalorian at all?
right?
Cool. Do you remember the Harrison Dula subplot from the back half of Ahsoka where she's having to deal with the council? I want to mash those two things up and do like a New Republic passing the torch to the next generation version of Andor. I would like to see
Okay.
Clea older. I would like to see Clea come back and train the next generation. So I'm listening to the Thrawn trilogy right now, and one of the original Thrawn trilogy from 1996. And one of the really interesting things that it does that I think this proposed idea would do is that the original 1996 Thrawn trilogy, the rebellion is now the New Republic. It is taking Coruscant and it has set itself up as the center of government. And the Empire under Grand Admiral Thrawn is not the dominant power anymore.
Right.
They are having to use the same tactics that the rebellion was using in order to attack them. So I would actually, I would be interested to see sort of these same spy games with some of these same characters like Vel and Clea and maybe Dedra coming back and having to switch roles essentially. So now the New Republic has their own intelligence division, but we have sort of these pockets of, fascist groups that have remained that are eventually going to be swept up into the First Order that we will see growing over time. That's what I would want to see this continue.
I kind of have like a an Andor adjacent idea. So like I think because it was so successful, I think I would also like to see more like a Rogue One, another One spinoff. I think I want to see more like I think you could still do another quote unquote prequel. So this would happen simultaneously, I guess, with Andor, the series, because it takes place 5 years before the Rogue One. But I want to see more Chirrut and Baze. I think I want to see like a show maybe about younger versions of them. Like so like a prequel series for just those two characters being younger and like being working in the temple and doing stuff. You know what I mean? Like I want to see that maybe aspect that we didn't get to see, like of those characters, kind of expand on that version of Rogue One. And maybe there are characters from Andor that are old enough that can be young in that show that kind of makes sense. Maybe. I don't know. That's just one idea of doing maybe them. But then I think if it has to be after Andor, like what's the next evolution of Andor? I think, I mean, the obvious answer is one you're going to hate, but it's going to be following his child and
Okay.
whatever happens to the kid. I don't know what that looks like. Maybe it looks
You're right,
completely
and I do
new.
hate it, but please
Yeah.
continue.
I think that's just a natural like option, like because they theoretically set it up in the end. Like it is a teaser essentially. I mean, I don't think you have to follow up on it. However,
Well, let
it would
me
be an
let me
easy thing.
clarify my own point because I don't want to come
Yeah.
off across as like I hate the idea of Cassian's kid getting their own story at all in the narrative. It's less of that and more that I understand that Star Wars is a legacy story and a generational story. I understand that so much of Star Wars is passing the torch from one generation, prequel generation to the original generation to the sequel generation to all of that. The thing is, I really like the idea that Cassian's kid just gets to go off and have a normal life. Like, sort of the implication at the end of the show is that, like, Cassian's sacrifice is going to build a better galaxy for this kid. We know it's not necessarily true because the sequels happen. I do kind of like that idea. So part of my I would dislike the idea of bringing that kid into the fight is that I feel like Cassian died to keep the kid out of the fight. I would have to see how it's handled.
Right. I mean, the problem is that Star Wars has a nasty history of only focusing on one particular family, making the galaxy seem small. And so I feel like in that tradition, why would you not just keep following the same family of now
No,
of
what
Cassian's
is Star
story, you know?
Wars if not endlessly repeating the same fucking thing over and
Right.
over and over again ad nauseum?
So it
Occasionally
actually
doing
works.
something more interesting that we will then repeat ad nauseum.
Yeah. My only other random thing that I would ever want to see is just something that is K2SO centered. I don't know how you would
Oh,
do
yes,
that.
obviously.
Honestly, I don't even know how you could do it because his body was incinerated by the Death Star, so I don't know how you could bring him back. I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter either way. He is a droid, so I guess you could just say it's him and call it a day. But I don't know, or some. I just need maybe there's lost missions with Cassian and and K2, that maybe it's not live action, maybe it's a animated show that is in between seasons of, or episodes of the seasons, something like that, like an extension of Andor maybe, where it's like I think actually an animated Andor would be very interesting because then you really could just kind of live on forever and just do as many seasons as you want. I mean, obviously they don't last more than three at this point, but I mean, if he wants to do in between the episodes arcs as animated stuff, like every season's in between each arc, that could be interesting. I don't know what that would look like, but like 16 episodes in between every arc could help round out a lot of the characters and just do like a Andor animated. I don't even know what it would be called,
I
but
would
like,
love to see like Andor, the Lost Missions, or the Between
right.
stuff. Yeah,
I think it would
definitely. That
work.
is something that I would love to see from them. And it's been so bizarre to me that they haven't had tie-in material, but like there wasn't any fucking tie-in material for the Bad Batch either until the Bad Batch actually
Right.
ended, and they just came out with a Bad Batch novel.
That's just a random thing. It doesn't
I
even
don't know. I
really
haven't
like
read it.
the
I haven't
plot
read
just
it.
seems
I'm
like,
behind.
yeah.
Uh, I haven't read Wayseeker yet.
Yeah.
I haven't even gotten to that, let alone to the Bad Batch novel. The people that I know that liked the Bad Batch started reading the novel and like the novel
Yeah.
so far. So the excerpts I've seen on social media just seem like more of the same. But my point is, there wasn't really any tie-in for that until
Right.
after it came out.
Which now we'll
And
probably start to see.
yeah, and so like maybe we'll see some more tie-ins with Andor now that the show has come out. Was that it? Was that all your various points you wanted us to go over, or do you have anything more?
I think that's it. I guess so. My final thing is just like, what are your final thoughts on the series as a whole?
Christ,
I
what
mean,
can I say that I have not
I
already
I know.
said?
I think that's what's
These
good
are
about this
long
show.
fucking episodes.
We've really kind of gone into them like I think enough to really like kind of get our point across. I think just for me, I'll just say I think it's really good. I think it's really entertaining. I think it works better as like really long movies. I think that's more like kind of what it feels like. It just feels like I'm watching kind of an old school kind of older like are not, you know what I mean? Like older movies used to be tended to be like a lot longer because they were just that's just how they were. I feel like this is what we're getting with Andor. I think each arc is kind of its own like mini movie. Well, not mini, but like extra long movie, I guess you could say. And I don't know. I think that the characters are great, the writing is good, the action is pretty good, and then I like it. It's just something I'll enjoy. Now, will I ever go back and rewatch it is another thing. Like I think that I've gotten everything I needed out of this show. I don't think I need to revisit it like multiple times to like be like, "Oh, that was so good. Let me just watch it again." It doesn't like I don't think this show offers like a happy place to where I'm like, "Oh yeah, I really want to watch that again," like to feel good about myself. Whereas like I think other projects do. And I think this one's more like I can appreciate it for the art that it is. I don't know if I'm ever gonna revisit it unless, like, for example, I had maybe, either a friend or a partner down the road who hadn't seen it and I wanted to experience it with them and let them watch it. I think that's the only way I would watch this again. I don't think I'd do it on my own, but I think I would like watch it with other people.
Yeah, my final thought is that there's not a piece of media that exists that is perfect. All art is subjective. There is also not anything that has been created by human hands that has been without something that you can dig in. And Andor is by far one of the highest quality TV shows I have ever seen in my entire life. It's absolutely stunning visually. It's the writing stunning, the acting stunning, the music stunning from beginning to end. It's incredible. And I don't want people to take away sort of my opinion of this second season in particular as necessarily having been negative, because I have gone in and talked a lot about where I thought the show fell short. I think that, as I said on a previous episode, and I'll reiterate again here, I think when you're doing media analysis and media criticism, you do have an ethical duty to train yourself to examine even things that you think are really good and discuss what elements of that maybe it could have done better, maybe what parts don't work, and also try to analyze why. so you can get that sort of media understanding going down the line. And this has been a very enjoyable experience. I watched the second season of the show. I loved the second season of the show. It has also been very enlightening and hopefully entertaining to go through and what are the parts of this that really work and what are the parts that make it so incredible. But also, what are the parts where it kind of fell short? What are the parts where maybe they can take lessons going down the road? It's certainly something that we've rarely ever seen something of this quality in the franchise before. It's a piece of Star Wars that was made with such a degree of care and love and heart that it's frankly astounding what they managed to pull off. And I do agree with you in the sense that like this is not a show that I'm just gonna put on. It's not like the other day when I was like, oh, I'll watch the original trilogy again, and I just put that on because I had fun with it. But I don't think that like excludes it from necessarily a prominent place in the overall story and the overall franchise. I think that again, one of the beauties of Star Wars is its versatility, that it can be many different things. There's a lot of different things that can kind of work in this universe and this franchise that they've created. And this was a bold swing. This was an incredibly bold swing. Did it necessarily always work? No, but they took those swings. And I do respect the show. This is my actual final thought. No matter what I thought of whether a swing hit or a swing missed, I respect Andor for having taken those bold swings when there's other pieces of Star Wars I think that could have benefited. That finally wraps up our coverage on Andor. I don't think we're going to take a week off, and then I don't think we should tell people what we're going to do.
You want it to be that much of a surprise?
I wanted to be that much of a surprise. We are going to do
Okay.
something that I don't think anyone in a million years. So we're going to take a little break from doing the deep analysis or anything that requires a lot of research.
Okay.
And we're going to do something more casual when we come back. And you'll find out what that is in 2 weeks.
Okay. I love the tease.
I'm glad you love the tease. Pluggables. You can find a bunch of reality TV show that Bradley has worked on streaming services and networks like Peacock and Bravo. Those include shows like Married to Medicine, Temptation Island, The Circle on Netflix, Queen's Court, and currently airing, I keep seeing billboards of it around LA, King's Court. You can find me on the Star Wars TTRPG podcast For Light and Dice, set in Star Wars' High Republic era. You can find queer books that I write on Amazon, Kindle, Barnes & Noble. Those are called Beach House Studios. Those are also thrillers. So if you liked Andor, you might like those. There's a lot more gay sex in them than there is in Andor, but
Right.
kind of the same
Kind
vein,
of the same?
I think. Kinda. Well, Bradley, you haven't gotten to book 3 yet, so we'll see if you have more of an opinion when you get further into the.
There you go. I'll be like, wait, isn't this the plot of Andor?
Talk to me when you hit book 5, which is
Okay,
not
there we
out
go.
yet, but I
There
know
you
what
go.
I know what it is because I've written it. And as mentioned a couple of times over the course of this episode, I'm involved with Legacy Expo, a Star Wars expanded universe fan-run convention in Burbank, September 13th through 14th. All right, Bradley, how do you feel? We're done with Andor. You feel good?
I feel like I'm standing in the middle of a wheat field and I'm just looking up into the sky with full of hope.
I think the planet might have suddenly gained a new moon, so perhaps you should run the socials. Thank you for listening to Gold Squadron Gaze. Did Charles fuck something up? Email us at goldsquadrongaze@gmail.com and let us know. You can follow us on BlueSky, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Gold Squadron Gaze. Subscribe to us on YouTube at Gold Squadron Gaze, where we post full episodes of this podcast. If you like the podcast, you can also rate us and review us on your favorite podcast app of choice. Please join us next week and every week for another episode of Gold Squadron Gaze. There's no politics in Star Wars, Bradley. What are you talking about?
That's never been a thing.
Never been a thing.